My name is Abby Lane. I'm 36. I live in a small town near Chicago and work as a nurse in a nursing home. I've always believed in kindness, in family, in the fact that love can do anything. But one day, I realized that even the closest people can break your trust. What to do when you give everything and in return you receive a lie? How to forgive someone who has used you for years, and most importantly, is it possible to start all over again, but differently? This is a story about how goodness collides with selfishness, about how one sister chose the path of deception and the other the path of forgiveness. A life full of pain, disappointment, and hope. If you like stories about human nature, about good and evil, about the choice between revenge and forgiveness, subscribe to the channel. There are many such stories here that make you think, feel, and rethink. Don't forget to like. It helps us create more important stories. And write in the comments, what would you do in Abby's place? Forgive or turn away? Because true strength is not in being sinless. It's in choosing kindness, even when it costs too much. Let's start again. My name is Abby Lane. I'm 36 years old and I live in a small town outside of Chicago that most people can't even find on a map. It's quiet, calm, and every day begins with the smell of coffee, fresh air, and devoted patients waiting for me at the St. Mary's nursing home. I've been a nurse for over 10 years, and there's probably not a single day when I regret it. Even in the hardest moments, when my hands are shaking from fatigue and my heart aches for another patient, I feel like this is my calling. I love helping people. Not because I want to be a hero or to be praised. It just hurts me to see someone suffering alone. When I was a child, my mother often said, "Kindness is what remains when everything else disappears." And I still believe in these words. I have a simple life. I live in an old but cozy house that I inherited from my grandmother. It creaks a little at night, but it is warm and always smells of mint and baked apple. I don't have a car, only an old bicycle that I ride to work, but it's enough for me. I know how to save money. I know how to enjoy the little things, the fresh sun in the morning, a cup of hot tea, kind words from patients. And I have a sister, a younger one. Her name is Sloane. When we were little, I always protected her. She was fragile, beautiful, and could charm anyone with just one look. Everyone loved Sloane. She knew how to be the light in the room, laugh louder than everyone else, move confidently, attract attention. But I noticed one thing from a young age. She easily asks for help, but never learns to cope on her own. At school, if she had bad behavior, she would find a way to blame it on anyone but herself. If she ran out of money for lunch, she would call me and cry like a starving princess. I always brought food. Then I realized that she simply spent all the money on new nail polish or candy that she wanted to show off to her friends. But I forgave. I knew that she was my sister. That family is the most important thing. Sloane grew up beautiful, charismatic, with a perfect smile and confidence that I so often lacked. After college, she began to find herself. She worked for a couple of months in advertising, then in a clothing boutique, then moved to New York to try herself in blogging. Every time she called and said, "Abby, I'm almost there. I'm just going through a rough patch right now," she would say she'd been robbed. Her car had broken down. The doctors had diagnosed her. Sometimes she'd cry on the phone, saying she felt lonely, that she couldn't afford the rent, that she was afraid of ending up homeless. I believed every word. I sent money. Not much, but enough to make her feel better. I knew I didn't have much, But I thought, isn't that what family is for? To support each other. But over time, strange details began to emerge. One day, I saw a photo of Sloane on Instagram, sitting in a trendy cafe in Los Angeles with the caption, "Best day ever." And the day before, she'd asked me to wire her $200 because she couldn't pay her electric bill. I didn't say anything. I just put the thought in the corner of my head. Another time it happened was when she wrote that she was sick and couldn't work, and a week later posted a story from a festival in Texas where she danced outdoors in a new dress. Again, I didn't say anything. Maybe she really got sick later. Maybe she was just lucky. But inside, I started wondering, why is it that every time she asks for help, everything gets better, but only for her? Still, I kept helping. I believed that one day she would change, that she was just going through a tough time, that sooner or later she would become the person I always saw her as, strong, smart, good. After all, I am her sister. I have to believe in her. Even if sometimes this belief was given it's too expensive for me. It all started the same way. Sloane would call, usually in the evening when I was tired after a shift and just wanted some peace and quiet. Her voice always sounded the same, a little shaky, weak, lost. "Abby, I'm having a really hard time. I don't know who else to turn to." And I would automatically put everything I was doing aside and listen, because this was my sister. And because I knew that if I didn't help her, no one would. The first couple of times, everything was simpler. She lost her job. The office closed. I was fired without notice. I would send a small amount, 200, 300. I thought, maybe she was just unlucky. Who among us hasn't been in this situation? But then other stories began. She would say that she was sick, seriously, that the doctor said she needed more rest, but the insurance had expired, that the bills were mounting and there was no time to find a new job. I believed it. I just couldn't imagine Sloane lying to me, especially about something like this. I remember she texted me one day crying, saying she was being kicked out of her apartment. "I can't pay the rent, Abby. I just need 2 weeks to find something new. You're the only person I can trust." I wired her most of my advance, even though I'd just paid for a plumbing repair at my grandmother's house. But I thought, if I were her, I'd want to stay. And every time I helped, she'd get happier. The calls were fewer. Sometimes I'd see pictures of her on social media, beautiful, well-groomed, with new clothes. She looked healthy, successful. No signs that she was struggling to make ends meet. Sometimes I wondered, is she really just going through a hard time? Maybe she really did get better. But sometimes I caught myself thinking that her hard times somehow coincided with the release of new clothing collections or sales in online stores. One day I received a photo from her. She was standing in front of a new phone, which I could not even afford. The caption, "I love it when an older sister knows how to make a gift." I replied with a smiley, but something inside me sank. I did not buy her this phone. I just transferred money for rent. But she seemed to think that it was the same thing. I began to notice oddities. She would suddenly disappear for a week and then appear with new makeup and the caption, "Days like these when life smiles again." She would say that she needed help with medical documents, and a couple of days later I saw her stories. She was sunbathing somewhere on the coast. I didn't ask. I didn't check. I just tried not to think about it, because if I started asking questions, I'd have to admit she was lying to me. And if she was lying to me, then I was wrong about her, and about this family, and about everything I'd believed my whole life. But I kept helping, because I was Abby Lane, because I was a nurse, because I couldn't just turn away from someone who was hurting, even if the pain was fake. And inside me, slowly, something new was growing. Not anger, not rage, something else. Something like anxiety. The question I kept asking myself, looking out the window after a night shift. Why do I keep giving, and she never gets better? And then I decided, just a little more, one more time, one more help. Maybe this time it would change. Maybe she would finally be the Sloane I'd always known and loved. But it didn't. Instead, one day, I got a text from someone I didn't even know, from Sloane's friend, and in the text was a photo of my sister on the beach, in sunglasses, smiling, and the caption, "I love it when my sister pays for my vacation." And in that moment I realized, this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern, and I wasn't the sister. I was the wallet. I can't say exactly how much time passed between when I got that text and when I finally looked at it again. Maybe a few seconds, maybe an eternity. The text came from a number I didn't recognize. No name, just a photo. Sloane, tanned, wearing big sunglasses, holding a glass of some expensive cocktail. She was sitting by a pool, not in some cheap hotel or rented apartment. No, this was where people with money lived, or those who know how to get it, even if it's not their money. The caption under the photo, "I love it when my sister pays for my vacation." And then another message followed. "Do you know she's been using you all this time?" I just stared at the screen, breathing, but it was like I couldn't breathe. Everything around me became too quiet, too clear, like the world had stopped so I could hear something inside me, breaking. I wanted to scream, forget it, convince myself that this was a joke, that someone was trying to separate us. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I felt it. Somewhere there, in the corner of my mind where I hid all the suspicions I didn't want to admit. This is not this father. I started looking through old messages, the ones where she cried, the ones where she said she felt bad, the ones where she asked for help because she was afraid to be alone. I found the photo she'd posted right after she'd gotten money from me. Fashionable things, trips, smiles. A life that didn't match up with what she told me. And then I realized she'd been playing with me from the very beginning. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. There was tea on the table, cold. The sun was shining outside. Everything looked normal, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. A few hours later, the call came. Sloane. I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen. I felt a chill growing inside. Not anger, not resentment. Something else. Something much more dangerous for a trusting heart. Disappointment. The next day, I got another text. "Hi, Abby. Have you seen my picture? It was a gift from a guy. He's really cute. By the way, I need help again. I need some money for my meds. I just haven't found a job yet. Will you help me?" I read those words 3 times, then I closed my phone and left it off all night. For the first time in my life, I didn't help. I didn't answer. I didn't send a cent. I didn't ask if she really needed the meds. I didn't tell her I loved her. I just stayed silent. Because for the first time, I felt how much pain the person you trusted more than anyone else in the world could cause. And then I made a decision. I wouldn't take her word for it anymore. I wouldn't sacrifice myself for the illusion of a family. I wouldn't keep giving when all I got in return was lies. I blocked her. On everything. On my phone. On social media. Even in my thoughts. But even after that, I couldn't sleep, because one question kept pounding in my head. How could I have been so wrong about my own sister? I hadn't heard from Sloane in almost 2 years. Not a call, not a text, no Instagram photos, no stories about hard times or new victories. She just disappeared from my life like she'd never existed. It was weird at first. I expected her to come back in a couple of weeks, apologize, say that everything would be explained. But none of that happened. And then I started thinking, what if she'd finally encountered real life, like for real? It turned out that was it. One day, when I was volunteering at a soup kitchen, I heard a familiar name. Not right away. One of the volunteers was talking to a woman who'd come to get food. "Yes, Sloane. We just accepted a request for a place to stay." She was lucky there was still a seat left. My insides froze. "Sloane?" I turned around slowly, and there she was. She was sitting on a bench by the entrance, wrapped in a shabby coat that was clearly too thin for winter. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail. No makeup on her face. There were shadows under her eyes. She looked lost. Not like the one I knew. Not the confident, brilliant girl who could charm the entire restaurant with just one look. I walked closer. She noticed me. Froze. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something in them I had never seen before. Shame. She wanted to get up and leave, but her legs seemed not to obey her. I didn't know what to say either. I wanted to walk past her. I wanted to pretend I didn't recognize her. But I couldn't. "Sloane?" I said quietly. She lowered her head. "Hi, Abby." A silence fell between us, heavy, oppressive, as if over the years we had not only stopped talking, but had become strangers. But even in the stranger, I still recognized my sister. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Waiting for a place to sleep," she answered shortly. "Tonight is the last place in the shelter." I felt something squeeze inside. It was not the voice I remembered, not the one asking for money, not the one playing the victim. This was the voice of someone who had truly lost everything. "Do you want some tea?" I asked, not understanding why. She looked at me with surprise, then she nodded. We sat in the corner of the dining room. I brought 2 paper cups of hot chocolate. She held it in her hands, warming my palms. I didn't know where to begin, but she spoke first. "I'm ashamed," she whispered. "I'm so ashamed." I was silent. I thought I could handle this, that I had friends, connections, opportunities, but it turned out I didn't. That they were all there when I was someone, and as soon as I became no one, they were all gone. She fell silent. She took a sip of chocolate. Her shoulders relaxed a little. I didn't know how to survive without you, Abby, without your translation, without just asking. I thought I was stronger, but I was weak. I looked at her and didn't know what I felt. Not anger, not relief, something in between, something like pain, but not just for myself anymore. Why didn't you write to me? I asked. Because you wouldn't answer, and I deserved it, she sighed. I want to change, not for you, not to be half-teach something. I don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want to use people. I don't want to pretend. I want to be who you've always been. Honest, kind, real. Her voice was shaking. I could see how hard it was for her. I can't just forget everything that happened, I said. But I'm glad you're starting to see the truth. She nodded. I don't apologize easily. I know I don't deserve it. But I want to at least start. And then I reached out. Not for a hug, not for words of reconciliation. Just to take her glass and set it next to mine. That was the first step. Not to things going back to the way they were, but to start over. It had been almost 6 months since the incident at the soup kitchen. I'd seen Sloane a few times since then, not often. We weren't the same sisters we used to be, not the ones who called each other in the morning or cried with laughter in the kitchen. But we were family again, only different, more real. She started volunteering at the same shelter where I found her. Then she got a small paid position helping women who, like her, had once found themselves on the street. She listened to them, supported them, told them her story, not for attention, but to help someone not repeat her mistakes. One day, she sent me a message. I spoke in front of a group today, told them how I lost everything, how I used trust, and how they helped me find my way back. I didn't ask for forgiveness, I just told the truth. Thank you for being the one who taught me to see it. I simply replied, I'm proud of you. This is just the beginning, but it's the real beginning. And then I realized she really had changed. One Sunday morning, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it, and there was Sloane, in casual clothes, no makeup, carrying a briefcase. Hi, she said. Do you mind? I came just to be here. I looked at her for a long moment. I didn't know what to say. Then I nodded. We didn't talk much. At first, we just sat on the porch drinking coffee and listening to the birds. But eventually, we started talking. About childhood, about my mother, about my father, whom we lost when I was 17. About how we used to bake pies on weekends until Sloane became too old for that. She was crying. So was I. I know I can't give back everything I took from you, she said. I know I can't erase the pain I caused you, but I want you to know that I will never be like that again. Never. I looked into her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I saw not fear in them, not lies, but genuine hope. You don't have to give anything back, I said. You have to be better than you were, for yourself, and then maybe one day we can be sisters again, not like before, but real. She hugged me, tight, like when we were kids, like she was afraid to lose me again. A few more months passed. Sloane started studying to be a psychologist. She wanted to help people like her, those who had lost themselves, who needed a chance. And I continued to work at the nursing home. People there call me the soul of the house. Sometimes they ask why I always stay after work, why I always take an extra shift. I usually answer simply, because I know what it's like to be alone. And I know how much one kind hand can mean. One day, I received a letter from the director of a local charity. They had established a scholarship named after Abby Lane for young nurses who choose this profession not for the money, but for the sake of helping. When I was asked to say a few words at the ceremony, I agreed. And so I stood on the stage in front of dozens of young people who wanted to serve people. Behind the scenes, a little further away, stood Sloane. She was smiling, proud. I took the microphone and said, "Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength. But true kindness is not blind giving. It is being able to see the truth, to be able to distinguish between those who need help and those who just want to use. It is not losing faith in people, even if you have been betrayed. It is not closing yourself off. It is continuing to believe in goodness, but with your mind, with your heart, and with an open soul." After the ceremony, Sloane and I went home. We walked. In the autumn wind, bags in our hands, coffee in the other. "You were great," she said. "And now you can be proud of yourself," I replied. She smiled, and in that moment I understood. Everything will be fine. Not because the past has disappeared, but because we have lived through it and chosen to be better together.